All right, let's dive right into Exodus chapter 7. We're going to walk through this incredible story, verse by verse, really painting a picture of what's happening. Think of it like we're watching the first major strike in an epic divine showdown. Ready? Let's get into it. So before all the action really kicks off, the entire point of this chapter, and really this whole series of events, is laid out right here. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. You got to see this as the main theme, right? This isn't just about freeing a group of people. This is a massive, divine announcement to the most powerful empire on earth. Okay, first up, the divine commission. This is basically the briefing room scene, where God empowers his messengers, Moses and Aaron, for the absolutely insane mission that's waiting for them.
Okay, verse 1. God lays out the power dynamic for Moses, and it's huge. He tells him, "See, I have made you as God to Pharaoh." Just imagine that for a second. It's this incredible transfer of divine authority. And Aaron? Aaron, your brother, shall be your prophet. So Moses is the source of the power, and Aaron is the one who's going to do the talking. He's the mouthpiece.
Verse 2 just hammers that home. It sets up the perfect chain of command. God gives the word to Moses, Moses relays it to Aaron, and Aaron delivers it loud and clear directly to Pharaoh. It's a direct line, super simple with no room for error.
So then in verse 3, God gives them a critical heads up. And this is a big one. He says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. Imagine Pharaoh's heart literally turning from flesh to stone right there in his chest. And verse 4 follows up on that. Pharaoh will not heed you. So God's telling them up front to expect rejection. When Pharaoh ignores them, they'll know it's not a failure. It's actually all part of the plan.
And verse 5 brings it all back to that main point we talked about. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. That is the ultimate goal here. So what do Moses and Aaron do with all this information? Verse 6 tells us they did exactly what the Lord commanded them. No questions, no hesitation. They just turned and went. That's some serious obedience. Now, verse 7 gives us a little detail that's, well, it's pretty mind-blowing. How old was Moses when this all started? He was 80. 80 years old. This was not a young man's revolution.
And get this, still in verse 7, his brother Aaron was 83. So we've got an 80-year-old and an 83-year-old walking into the most powerful court in the world to make these incredible demands. It really just underscores that this whole thing is going to be about God's power, not their own strength.
All right, scene change. Now we're in Pharaoh's court for the serpent showdown. The talking is over. It's time for a demonstration. This is where real power goes head-to-head with court magic.
So in verses 8 and 9, God preps them for the very first test. You can just hear Pharaoh, can't you? Sitting on his throne, all smug, basically saying, "Oh yeah? Prove yourselves. Show me a miracle." And God has the perfect response ready. He tells Moses, "Tell Aaron, take your rod and cast it before Pharaoh and let it become a serpent."
And here we go. Verse 10, the moment of truth. Aaron steps up in that silent throne room, throws his wooden staff on the floor, and bam! That dead piece of wood starts to move, to twist, to grow scales, and suddenly there's a huge hissing serpent right there on the palace floor. You can just imagine the gasps and the wide eyes of everyone watching.
But does this faze Pharaoh? Not one bit. Verse 11, he just kind of smirks and calls in his own guys, the wise men, the sorcerers, and they step forward, all confident, and do the exact same thing. They throw down their staffs and poof, more serpents. For a second, it looks like he's just called their bluff.
But then comes verse 12, and the game changes completely. Suddenly, the floor is this writhing mess of snakes. But Aaron's serpent, it's different. It rears up, and it doesn't just fight the other snakes. It swallows them. One by one, they just vanish, gone. Talk about a power move. This wasn't a contest, it was an annihilation. It established who is really in charge.
So what's Pharaoh's reaction to seeing his magicians get utterly humiliated? Verse 13 tells us his heart grew hard. Instead of being amazed or maybe even a little scared, he just doubles down and digs in his heels. He refuses to listen, exactly like God said he would.
So the warning shot was fired and ignored. Time to escalate, dramatically. Next up, the river runs red. This is the first official plague, and it's a big one.
So in verse 14, God confirms it again. Pharaoh's heart is hard. So time for a new plan. Verse 15 sets the scene. It's morning, and Pharaoh's down by the Nile River. God tells Moses to go and meet him right there. And in verse 16, the message is the same. But now the setting is crucial. It's one last verbal warning: let my people go. And then, in verse 17, God lays out the horrifying consequence for saying no. He says, "By this you shall know that I am the Lord." The plan? To strike the Nile and turn the entire river into blood. And verse 18 details just how awful that's going to be. All the fish will die, the whole river's going to stink, the very source of life for all of Egypt is about to become a source of death.
And verse 19 makes it clear just how total this plague will be. God tells them to stretch out their hand over all the waters of Egypt. We're talking streams, ponds, pools, even the water people had stored away in jars and buckets. Everything is going to turn to blood. There is literally nowhere to hide from this.
Verse 20 is the moment it all happens. Right in front of Pharaoh, Aaron lifts his staff and strikes the water, and you can just see it, an instant shockwave of crimson spreading through the Nile. All the water turns to blood. And verse 21 confirms the immediate fallout. The fish die, the river stinks, the Egyptians can't drink a single drop. It's a full-blown catastrophe.
And what happens next is just wild. Verse 22 says the Egyptian magicians show up again. Now they can't fix the river, but they manage to find some clean water somewhere and turn that into blood too. They just make the problem worse. But for Pharaoh, that's all the excuse he needs. His heart grows even harder and he dismisses the whole thing.
These next two verses show this stunning split screen. In verse 23, Pharaoh just turns around and goes back to his palace. The text says he didn't even take this to heart. Just total indifference. But then, verse 24 shows us the rest of Egypt. The people are in a panic, on their hands and knees, digging in the dirt around the river, desperately trying to find any water they can drink. The king is comfortable, while his people are suffering.
And the final verse of the chapter, verse 25, tells us how long this horror lasted. 7 days. A full week. Can you imagine an entire week where the lifeblood of your country is a stinking river of death? That number, 7, really lets the weight of this first plague sink in. So here we are, a river of blood, a heart of stone. The first strike was devastating, and yet the king didn't even flinch. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If a display of superior power and a nationwide catastrophe aren't enough, what is? What does it actually take to break a king like this?